Good evening and welcome to Spirit Radio. I am your host, Willie Hassel. Along with my co-host, Lynn Nickerson, we will take you on a journey into the unknown where the paranormal becomes the normal. A journey to a world cloaked in darkness where reality becomes a thin veil. So sit back, relax, and join us as we venture into the shadows, the darkness, the unknown, and back. Good evening, and welcome once again to Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience. I am your host, Willie Hassel, your gatekeeper to the dark side, and your guide to the realm of the unknown. And, you know, I haven't done the intro that way in a long time. I completely forgot about that. But anyway, she is the lovely, she is the mystical, and she is the mysterious Lynn Nickerson. Good evening. How are you?
And she is vocally compromised and challenged.
Yeah, vocally challenged. Well, that's okay.
Well, aside from that, I'm doing pretty darn good, Willie. How about you?
Hey, I'm doing excellent, actually.
Good,
to tell you the honest truth, if that's what you want, I guess.
Yeah, I wanted to hear that.
All right.
And by the way, yes. I got to mention,
yes,
your glasses are a lovely fashion statement.
It's a good thing we're not on camera today.
I was just going to say, everybody's really missing those nice-looking glasses with a lovely green chain.
I know it, especially the ones that Sean did for us. Hey, did you know that something like 500,000 miles...
Not quite that many, is it? I thought it was 250.
I believe it is 500,000.
Well, our guest can confirm that. That's
right.
for sure.
Yes, we'll confirm
that. But that was quite an astounding fact when I read that.
I know
a lot of stone walls.
I know it. Enough to make one wall around the earth 20 times.
Yeah, a few times anyway.
Yeah. So tonight on Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience, we welcome to the show Barbara DeLong. Barbara is a spiritual empath, an author, artist, Reiki master, and lecturer. And she is also an ordained spiritual minister. She served at a local spiritualist church as one of the rotating ministers from 2003 to 2008. Her paintings of personal mandalas for friends evolved into a circular oracle card deck called the Cosmic Deck of Initiation.
Oh, neat. I didn't know about that.
Initiation, and it was published in 1991. In 2011, Barbara completed a project she was working on titled Secrets of the Stones, a video documentary which she wrote, narrated, and co-produced. A look into some of the stone chambers, stone circles, standing stones, and some thousands of miles of stone walls that line the New England countryside. She is also the host of her own podcast radio show called Nightlight, which features subjects such as spiritual philosophy and metaphysical studies. So, please, let's welcome to the show tonight, Barbara DeLong. Good evening, Barbara. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate you guys having me on.
Well, it's a pleasure, believe me, so thank you for coming on.
We appreciate you joining us.
So I had no idea you were into so much. Do you ever sleep?
Actually, I have found that it's very exciting to do all of the different things that I do, so that I find often when I go to bed at night, my head won't stop.
I know.
So,
know that feeling.
Yeah.
So I have to get up and get back on the computer and keep digging.
And take notes and notes.
It's really funny. My late husband Patrick Cook had a photographic memory.
Did he?
And I hated him for it. To be honest with you,
I understand.
But I am finding that when you dig into something that's fascinating for you, that what is most appropriate stays with you. So that the element of taking notes is not something I actually do. I just figure whatever resonates at the right place at the right time is going to come out of my mouth appropriately. And every now and then, somebody will talk about a biblical question or something like that, and I will spout the answer. And And I know I have to be channeling Patrick because I don't have the biblical background that he did.
Wow. So you have the appropriate information at the appropriate time.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fabulous. I guess the information, too, would resonate with you so that it makes sense, so that you remember some of it anyway, except what comes from Patrick, I would imagine.
Yeah, somebody asked me about that because, when I do the interview shows for my radio, when I do the interviews, I read the books. I read all the books of that the people have, written before I actually do the interviews.
Mm-hmm.
And a friend of mine said, how do you store all of that? Because it just keeps coming back and I have no idea. Our brains are huge computers. There's plenty of room there. It's almost like you have an unlimited amount of storage space there, so you can cram in as much as you want.
But you must take show notes, don't you, before you go on after you've read that? You really don't? I'd be totally lost.
No, when I do a show, I ask the person to give me, what is most important for them to get over.
Uh-huh.
But I don't script any of my shows at all, and I just let Spirit take us where we're supposed to go. And quite often we go in weird and wonderful places. But
well, I got to say, you're better than I am. That's really a talent.
Well, Patrick used to say that I was a master at improv. And
well, there you go.
Maybe
you are.
That's the case. I don't know. I just know that there's always something to say, and there's always a way to lead somebody into material that is really important for them to get across, even though, they have it. They'll give me questions to ask, and I always ignore them, but it makes them feel good to give questions, figuring, I'll hit something that they can talk about, but I always manage to find really interesting tidbits to pull out of them that they didn't know were there.
Well, you have an incredible website. You had talked about, revising it and so forth, and I've spent hours on it so far. There's just so many categories that are really, really interesting, and I think everybody should know that it's BarbaraDeLong.com, and she's got spiritual stuff on there. She's got an extensive UFO list. She's got different aspects of our spiritual world. You do remote viewing on various locations of ancient mystery, which I find that fascinating. And then, of course, you've got the secrets of the stones, which we wanted to talk about tonight. But there's such a variety on your website, Barbara. Very, very interesting stuff.
Well, it's kind of, I talk to people about the importance of journaling, the importance of writing things down to let the universe know you got the information, you got the aha moment or whatever it was. And somebody said to me, and where's your journal? And I said, have you seen my website?
Well, it's very well done and very extensive. So, but I did want to kind of focus on the stones tonight. If there's something else you want to bring up, please feel free. But I thought maybe we could start off with how you got involved with what Patrick Cook was working on, and then how your relationship developed, and then your quest for the stones, the information on the stones.
Oh, sure. Well, when I was in college, a UFO landed on my campus. And I saw it, and that was really the beginning of my journey towards the unknown on all different levels and all different areas. And I'd been doing the radio show for a number of years, and I met somebody that had written a book about authenticated UFO sightings in the U.S. And I had him on the show, and I was interviewing him because, finally there was proof. Finally, I could prove to people that I had not been drinking that night, that it really was a UFO sighting. And so, we had a lovely time talking about the different UFO things, the Battle of Los Angeles and 47, the Roswell, and even coming forward from that, and of course all of the sightings that are in the Hudson Valley Basin, of which I'm very close to.
Oh, yeah.
And so while I'm talking to the author in the chat room, this man was saying, "Oh, I'm an expert in the field, and I've written books, and I can add to your interview." And after my guest had to go, I pulled Patrick on, and we talked more about UFOs and UFOs in the Bible and philosophy and all sorts of things. And it's rare for somebody to have an actual recording of meeting the person that you eventually marry. But I have the show. And so Patrick and I started talking back and forth, and the show was in November, and he was in Berkeley, California, and I was here in Connecticut. And he sent me at one point a video from a YouTube video that Phil Ambrogno had put up about the chambers. And he said, "Do you know anything about them?" And I said, "Know anything? I live in the middle of them." And the more we talked, the more we decided that we had something special, and we had decided that we were going to get together, but we weren't quite sure how, when, or where. And finally he said, "Well, why don't I just move in?" And I said, "Fine."
Oh.
Now that's, and that's exactly how it happened. So
wow.
The following June, I got on a plane. I flew to San Francisco. Patrick met me at the airport with his van, everything he owned packed in it, including his 3 cats. And our very first date was driving 3,000 miles across the country.
You are kidding
Wow.
me. Talk about spontaneous. That
Yeah,
was quite a
really.
leap.
Yeah, and if anybody told me they were going to do that, I would tell them they needed a shrink.
Right,
I mean,
advise them against it.
but it was the most natural thing in the world. And if a 3,000-mile first date doesn't kill you, nothing will.
Truly.
And
That's true.
the miles sped by, and we talked the whole way, and the cats behaved, and he moved in, and we started searching out the chambers, and we were randomly doing it. We knew where they were basically situated, and we happened to run across, and all of this time, of course, his radio show was called Matrix Radio. I was still doing Nightlight Radio. Mm-hmm. So we were putting out what we were looking for and what we were looking into on the radio.
And people gave you advice?
He did 2 shows a week. I did 2 shows a week. And Martin Breck got a hold of us, and he had done extensive research, and we met with him, and he gave his research to Patrick.
Wow.
So at that point, we had the GPSs and the locations of about 200 to 300 chambers that were all throughout New England, mostly in the Carmel area, but certainly scattered in the Carmel in New York area, but all over New England as well. And that's how. And so we started visiting all of them. And I think I've probably been in over 100 of them, possibly more.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Originally, there were 800 chambers here. Now it's down to about 200.
Wow.
And they are being destroyed as roads are widened, as people need patio stones, as they're used to store garbage in. They are not,
mm-hmm.
and some of them are on in national forest lands, so they are preserved. But
they're just decimating history.
Yeah, we've got Gunjiwamp, which is phenomenal, but we've also got American Stonehenge, and you've been there.
Yeah.
And so we just made it, and the more we saw, the more upset we got that they weren't being recognized, they weren't being documented, they weren't being preserved.
It's very disheartening. I hate seeing any walls destroyed, let alone the rest of the stuff. It just on that level, it really bothers me. They build new houses, they destroy those walls like it's nothing.
Well, I think what got us was that they Sturbridge Village is here, and that takes you back to the 1700s, and they're preserving log cabins and all sorts of things like that. And yet these stone chambers are older than that, and they're being ignored.
Yeah.
And we put together a documentary called Secrets of the Stones.
It's wonderfully done, by the way.
I wrote it and narrated it. Patrick learned how to make a movie, and we were contacted by Megalithomania, and they asked us if we would present it at their 2011 conference, and we said sure.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And so we presented it there, and it was, and I introduced it, and I said, this is rough, but be kind. and when the lights went back on, everybody was crying.
Wow. Barbara, I've got to ask you some specifics. Number one, the stones, the stone chambers. Do you find that a lot of them are discovered all alone, or are the chambers seemingly part of a much larger structure, like something similar to Stonehenge?
No, all of them are isolated.
Isolated.
I mean,
okay.
Some of them are close to each other.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in a day you could probably hit 10 or 15 easily.
Okay, then you've come across balance stones, or even like dolmen, lone standing stones.
Some of them. Gunchiwamp has stone circles and has standing stones.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of dolmens in many places. There are, they are random though, and they are
random.
They're either at the side of the road, or they are, you follow a stone wall, and before you know what's happening, there is this stone chamber in the middle of the woods.
What do you think the correlation is between, like, the standing stones, the lone standing stones, the walls, the chambers, even the stone circles like you see at Gunchiwamp?
Well, at Gunchiwamp, you have a lot of the different chambers. You have a lot of different things there. And at American Stonehenge, that's another place where there's a lot of different structures all together. Those are the only two places that I have seen the collection, so to speak. Now, almost every stone chamber we've seen has been connected to a stone wall.
Ah, okay.
But and the walls meander through the forest. The walls, I mean, we never got any place on time. We were always finding another stone wall to follow and to try to see if there was a chamber connected to it somehow. They almost always had a stone wall or or whatever was left of one with them. You can't carbon date stone, so it's hard to tell, how old they are, except the only thing that got to us was that there have never been any artifacts found, near to or within any of them.
Well, I did hear about one of them in upstate New York, and I don't know exactly where it was, but an obsidian knife was found wedged way in behind the stones on the inside.
That is a questionable discovery.
Oh, really? Okay.
There is it's
something fraudulent about the information?
Yes.
Okay. Well, then let me ask you, you've been inside the chambers then. Did you experience, other than ticks, did you experience anything like spiritual, a time anomaly, or some kind of, glitch in time?
Well, a lot of them, have you ever been inside a crop circle?
I haven't yet. I'd love to.
Okay. Well, it's very similar to that.
Is it?
It has, being inside these chambers, it feels, are you familiar with the old TV show Get Smart?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, you know how the Domus came down so that they could talk privately?
Uh-huh.
That's what the chambers feel like. It feels like suddenly you are surrounded and protected. You don't hear the noise of the cars as they go by outside if you're right next to a street.
I've heard that.
There is a sense of peace and tranquility in them that is really profound. The chambers aren't huge, but I found that there were, well, first of all, they're dry construction, so that there is no mortar or anything like that, and they are all corbelled construction. So that, and the last time corbelled construction was used was 3,000 years ago by the Phoenicians.
Mm-hmm. There's some in Ireland, too.
Corbelled construction, unless it's with dominoes these days.
Okay.
So the construction is fascinating. The chambers are watertight.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, they don't drip water. They are absolutely. We're not sure really how they did it, but you in a good pouring down rain, you can step into them and they are bone dry.
I'll be darned. Well, most of them have sod or soil of some kind on top of them, including grass or maybe even dried leaves. So I guess it offers some protection.
No, they weren't finished off that way. The chamber was built as an above ground chamber. Time has buried it. So that often there are trees growing out of the tops of them.
Yes, I know. I've seen that.
But for the most part, the chambers were originally above ground.
Okay, so do you get the sense that you are like in a vacuum almost because there is no sound, there is no noise, kind of like the Oz factor that they talk about, where you feel like you're sort of in a time capsule or just outside of time? Well,
you do feel isolated.
Okay.
And I think, I checked, watches and electronics. They did tend to drain batteries fast if you were in them for very long. You get the feeling that they're. I'm a psychic medium on top of everything else. So I was looking for residue spirits or any kind of a feeling of, this was a ritual chamber or this was a burial chamber, and you can sense those things even inside of great antiquity, but I never felt anything like that in any of these chambers.
So what do you suppose, we'll get into who we think built them, but what do you suppose the purpose of the stone chambers themselves are? Do you think they're ritualistic?
Well, I don't think so.
Okay.
The more we tried to figure out what they were obviously not used for storing food, and they were not used as dwellings because first of all, storage of food, there was no cross ventilation, and they had no doors. And as far as there was, you could not see any place where shelves had been built in them or that the logs had been, shoved in so you could hang things on them. You couldn't have a fire in them because there was no ventilation. There was just the door. So my feeling over time has gotten to the point where, to me, they feel like portals.
Okay. That makes sense. Portals.
And it would be easy to go dimension to dimension and come out of a chamber like that. Now, the chambers that are over in Europe that are similar, they call them passage tombs.
Oh, do they?
And they in Europe think that they were tombs, and of course you've got Newgrange, and you've got a lot of places where they definitely have found bones in. They have found no bones in any of the chambers that I have been in or that I know about.
In the United States?
None. Absolutely none. The one strangely unique thing is, and some of them are oriented towards the sunrise and stuff like that, not all of them, but in some, there is a magnetic anomaly in the entrance to the chamber.
Oh, okay. Do you think the word...
Let anybody dig down to find what it is.
Do you think the word tomb is a misnomer, or do you think it's like a passageway from one beginning to another beginning, from ending and then beginning, as in one dimension to another?
That's what my guess would be. At least the ones that I have been in. I haven't been in any of them in Europe. Some of them in Europe, some of the big ones, they said that they have found bones in, and in those cases, quite clearly, somebody was buried there. But none of the chambers here in New England were sealed.
Yeah,
there were no
open.
rocks that sealed them up. They were not closed. As far as I know, they have always had just the one opening, and that was it, and the opening was never covered.
Okay, before we leave stone chambers then, how about on the interior? Did you find, either with frequency or all the time, whether or not there was some kind of a white quartz stone in there, built into the wall somewhere?
Nothing.
Really?
Nothing. Every now and then there would be a ledge in the back, but that was usually because it was built up against a stone ledge.
Okay.
There is not in any of the that I have been in did I see any way that they were not meant to be lived in.
No, that I realized, but I thought maybe there might be a connection with electromagnetism and the quartz being some sort of repeater, or not a catalyst, but an amplifier. There we go.
Could be.
That was my thought.
Well, and a lot of them are built. We got a lot of granite here.
Yeah.
And there's quartz in the granite as well. I thought for a while that they might be used for communication too. Truly,
that's another good idea.
Because of the quartz in the granite, someone who is sitting in one could, if you had the talent or the gift, could possibly transmit a message to someone else in another chamber. But they are so on my website on Secrets of the Stones, I have a map of where all these chambers are.
That is such a wonderful thing. Willie and I have been using that. Thank you for doing that. That is so helpful.
It was fun. I learned how to use a lot of things I never knew how to use. But
it's so helpful.
The GPSs are fairly accurate. A number of people have really been able to find the chambers from it.
Good.
So it's they are so scattered that you can't imagine they would want to communicate when they could yell across the street in some cases.
Yeah.
So if it is communication, in my mind, it had to be a higher consciousness type of communication.
And you say the electromagnetic field would be at the entryway, so it says something to me that enhanced communication somehow on another level, another dimension perhaps.
Easily could have.
Yes. You know what, Barbara? We are at the bottom of the hour, and when we come back, we'll wrap up the stone chambers or how they correlate
Well, welcome back to Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience. And tonight we are talking to Barbara DeLong about stone chambers,
Stone
walls,
structures.
stone structures, all kinds of cool stone stuff.
So welcome back again, Barbara.
Welcome back, Barbara.
So
Thank you.
we were talking about stone chambers and the possibility of using them for communication. And what I wanted to bring up, or at least ask you, have you noticed that their close proximity to sources of water?
No.
Well, a lot of them seem to be not far from a river, from a swamp, from a brook, from a pond. I've kind of noticed that.
The ones that I've visited, and even at Gunshewamp, and even American Stonehenge, they really weren't that close to water.
Well, except that there's some have wells, but it seems like they're like within a mile of some water source. And maybe some underground water source.
That could be. Could be. We didn't notice that.
Okay.
The thing that I was working on were the fact that I think that they might have been some form of an initiative process in raising of consciousness.
Ah. I think you're onto something there. That makes a lot of sense to me. Then why would they be located or found in close proximity to the stone walls? Why do you think?
Well, I think at some point in time, and you can't prove it now, but I think from what I could tell, that the stone walls really were a network of connectivity to a lot of these.
Kind of like a vein system in a body?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're talking large stone walls too here. We're not talking little ones. We're talking substantial walls. I know at Gunshewamp some of the walls are 10 and 15 feet high, and they're 3 and 4 feet deep.
Wow.
They're huge walls.
And the purpose? Why do you suppose?
Beats me. I have no idea what they were trying to keep in or out.
Obviously not to keep the cows from wandering.
No, don't think so.
No, and the ones that we found that were very close to where we live, the stone walls were complete. And in other words, there were no gates. So unless you were lifting the cows one by one over the stone wall, it made no sense. Not only that, the stone walls have to be many hundreds of years old, and the ground has been built up, between them. So these walls, while they may look 3 or 4 feet tall now, quite possibly were as much as 10 feet tall.
Oh.
So you just and around where I live, you can't spit and not hit a stone wall.
Did I get that right in the introduction? 500,000 miles of stone walls in New England?
At least. And that was from an 1879 archaeological study. So by the government, by the Department of Agriculture.
That's mind-boggling.
It really is. Yeah. So it sort of indicates that it wasn't the colonists who built that network of stone walls, number one. Number two, I think they might have built some of them because there were stone walls that sort of created roads where they would be built about 40 feet apart, and that's where the colonists built the roads. But I don't think the colonists built everything. I mean, they had stone wall foundations that were dry construction, but there's just so many more walls than I ever realized. I just don't think...
Patrick tried to compute just how long it would take to build a wall a mile long or whatever, and he... understanding that they only had 6 days a week they could work, and they only had a certain number of days during the season that they could work. I mean, they would have to be laying, so much stone that there would be no time to plant crops. to hunt, to do anything. I mean, it's impossible for the colonists to have done it. Many have said that they were just clearing their fields, but the fields that most of these walls surround are full of rocks. So they either did a lousy job, or they're growing rocks, or there was some other purpose to them.
Well, I will say that we had a farm when we were growing up, a garden, and every year we would pitchfork the soil and till it, and as you loosen the top surface, the bottom, the deeper soil, the subsoil, starts loosening up, and it does force other stones up. Summer after summer, I would find boulders that weren't there the year before. But that only accounts for a few stones. We're talking masses of walls, and we're talking stone piles and stone cairns, which is something else. Do you have any idea what these stone cairns, the purpose of them, are?
I just have my opinion. I can't have nothing to base it on. But to me, they were markers of some sort, directional markers.
Now, some of them were like piles of stones, but some of them were like wide and thick and sort of hollowed out in the center, almost like a boat.
Those I haven't seen. The piles, though, to me, unfortunately, we didn't. LiDAR wasn't around when the walls really were more intact, so that you could actually go across an area and just see how the walls were connected with the chambers. That there's been too much destruction of material to be able to.
In a lot of cases.
Yeah.
Well, then what about the standing stones, Barbara? There were some standing stones in the walls, and then you've got the isolated lone standing stones or dolmens. What do you think those were used for? What do you think the purpose was?
Again, I think they were markers, and I think they were quite possibly not left by the same culture that did the stone chambers.
Oh,
I think you've got thousands of years here. And there probably was a culture that built the stone chambers and another culture that used the standing stones because, they're very different.
They are.
The stone chambers and the stone walls there's an artistry to them. The standing stones, not so much. And the balance stones, they're phenomenal.
They are amazing. And what do you think the purpose, your personal opinion, the purpose was of those? Why do that?
Just to see if you can.
See, it's a lot of work.
It's kind of like because they could. I've seen a couple of them, especially in the New Hampshire area, where they were as big as locomotives.
Wow. They are massive, massive stones.
On a very, very small tip. And the one that was in the state park that when we were doing the video and everything, and I said to him, we're talking about balanced rocks and we've never actually seen one. And he said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I want to see one.
Yeah.
And so we got in the car and we went and found one. And the one that we found in the, it was a national park in New Hampshire, I believe. It was balanced on its tip, and it was huge. It weighed more than a locomotive, and Patrick said, "Don't get too close." And I went up to it, and I had a metal detector in my phone. I thought maybe a steel rod or two was there, and there was nothing inside the stone that would have no Gorilla Glue or anything.
Yeah.
And I tried to push it over. And
brave woman.
Well, it's been there for hundreds of years. If I could push it over, then it wasn't done, as well as one would have thought. It was as firm as if it was all made out of the same rock, and even so, we've had earthquakes, we've had storms, we've had forest fires, we've had all sorts of things, and these balanced stones haven't been moved.
Well, I've got an opinion on that.
Okay.
I think There's a book out called Initiation by Elizabeth Haich. It's Haich. And it's a story about a woman who no longer had her marital relationship after 7 years, and she started having dreams, and she dreamt that she had been an Egyptian priestess. And she talks about the humming and the chanting, the vibration that they created by the different workers that levitated the stones. It changed the molecular structure of them so that they decreased the weight, and they were able to lift them and move them with ease.
Maria Wheatley, who's a master dowser in England, has something. The standing stones in Avery are emitting a signal, an energetic. And if you look at Machu Picchu, and if you look at in Teotihuacan, and in many other areas, the stones that have been cut and are laid together are so finely, there is a fusing of the rock. And I think with the balanced stones, that's what's happened. In some way, shape, or form, they have, maybe these were experimentations, I don't know. But it's almost as though the stones are fused.
Well, that's an interesting point. The other one I was going to say is especially the standing stones, maybe the balanced stones as well, especially the very large ones. I would think that they could be used as antennas.
Oh, in Avery, in England, she found that the standing stones actually had 7 different frequencies that were emitting from them, 2 below the ground and 5 above, and the ones, the chakras, the levels below the ground were communicating with the stones that were in that circle. The layers above were actually communicating with other stone circles and other stone structures in other parts of England.
Oh, how was that determined?
They had a well, first of all, she's a dowser, and she determined it by dowsing, and then they brought in a man who had an electronic machine that was able to sense the frequency at different levels on the stones, and he was able to absolutely duplicate the chart she had made with his machine. The different frequencies were being sent out by the different levels of the stones.
Was that due to composition of the stone or just the height between frequencies?
Well, the stones are really big.
But how was the frequency determined? Was it by composition or simply distance between the frequencies somehow?
Distance between the frequencies.
How odd. That is just amazing information. What was her first name, Wheatley?
It's Maria Wheatley. I can give you her. I'll send you her contact information and everything.
Oh, yeah, I'd love to read whatever she wrote. That is absolutely fascinating. I think that's a key, Barbara. I think that's one of the keys.
Yeah, her father was a master dowser in England, and he's written the best book ever on dowsing.
Oh, I think that's worth looking into.
Yeah, well, both of their books are on my website on the I recommend section in the book section. They're there, and the place you can get the books are connected.
Thank you. Because I really think that will help demystify the purpose of these stones. Maybe not all of them, but I think it'll bring us closer to answers. Don't you?
Well, oh, absolutely. And, she's fascinating because she discovered at Stonehenge there were henges that were long henges, and she discovered that there were the bodies in them had elongated skulls.
Wait a minute. Where were the bodies?
In the henges.
Do you mean inside the stones or buried within the circle of the henges?
Within the henges. The henges were the
circles
earth that was piled up around these different areas, and in a couple of the long henges, in one she found someone who was obviously a queen, and then in another henge they found I can't remember how many, 20, 30, 40 bodies that had the elongated skulls, and all of them had been murdered.
And this is in England?
Yeah.
Oh,
At Stonehenge.
Oh, that's fascinating. Oh, I can't wait to read about that. Gee whiz. Well, then you say elongated skulls, so that brings me to my next question. Which cultures do you think are responsible for these structures? Let's do England.
England apparently their Stonehenge was developed in at least 4 different phases.
Okay.
So it wasn't all done at one time. And so the period in which the elongated skulls were, I forget, was in the 2nd or the 3rd phase of the development of Stonehenge. As far as the chambers in this country, I really feel that there was a culture, a people that we haven't actually discovered yet. And when some of these they talk about some of these chambers being aimed towards the rising sun or the setting sun. I don't think that was intentional. I don't think that was what they were used to. I mean, it just happened that way. I do not believe that they were meant to be a ritual for solstices at all.
Okay. Maybe the direction had something to do with the sun and solar emissions, though. Maybe that might have been. It
might have had something to do with just light.
Yeah. Yeah. Then, since the stone chambers are small, do you suppose it was a small race?
No, I mean, I could stand up. Well, I'm short. Patrick could stand upright in a lot of them. They were like from 8 feet by 10 feet, and then probably about 6 feet tall. A lot of them.
Okay, so they were probably made to go in and to sit down and sit with with your knees akimbo or whatever. And
it could, I don't know, but I do feel that whatever culture built these, they probably, because there are no pictures, there's no way to link them to any particular culture. The Native Americans here said that they didn't do them, and and Indians never make walls to
I know no boundaries.
They share the land. They don't.
That's right. No
cut
boundaries.
it up. And so it had to be before them, and the Indians came in about 15,000 years ago. So it probably was a culture that predated that. But if you look at North America, and you realize that in Michigan and Minnesota, the copper mines have been in service. They've been mined for the last 9,000 years.
Yeah.
This country has so much that we don't
know
about, and there's so much that's been going on here. I mean, we have pyramids here. We have we have so much stuff here in this country that people say antiquity, and you look to Greek,
Egypt,
Roman,
and
we have stuff here in this country that's older.
You really think it's older?
Absolutely older.
Wow.
Why would stop and think a second? I mean, you've got Egypt, and you've got Africa, and you've got South America, and you've got Great Britain, all of whom have cultures that go back thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Why would they leave one great big blob part of land with nothing in it? That doesn't
really,
make sense.
Yeah, unless it was submerged. But it seems like
it wasn't submerged.
No, it doesn't seem that way. There's a submerged pyramid in Wisconsin? Yeah. And any information on that, Barbara?
No. I've heard about it. I know there are pyramids underwater down in the Bahamas, too.
Yeah, I've heard of that. What about on your chart in Newburyport, there's supposed to be something in the Merrimack River. What was that artifact? It's on your map, and it's either a standing stone or a chamber, but it's underwater, evidently.
I obviously didn't visit there.
Oh, you didn't visit there? Let me see if I've got the number.
No, scuba was nothing we had, gone into. We kept to the dry land.
Yeah, I just meant you've got a stone chamber posted in the middle of the Merrimack River in Newburyport, but I failed to write down the number on your map.
Oh, wow.
I
don't think that we actually checked that one out, but...
okay.
They're all over the place. They're underwater in the Hudson.
Oh, that's right. The stone walls, you said.
Yeah.
And they run parallel to the flow of the river, right?
Yes.
That's really strange. And how long ago was that on dry land where the stone walls are?
It could be millions of years.
Oh, that's just mind-boggling.
Yeah.
So, what do you think came first then? The walls, the chambers? Or what do you think the progression was?
I think my feeling is that the walls and the chambers probably were pretty close together. Standing stones probably earlier than that.
Oh.
So, when you have civilizations rising and falling, after 3,000 or 4,000 years, it's amazing that they still are here. And I think what upset us so much was that they're still here and they're not being protected.
Yeah, it's devastating when they're destroyed. I think it's terrible. Do you think, without giving any names to these cultures, do you think that they could have been extraterrestrial then? Of extraterrestrial origin?
I would hope extraterrestrials would have, would be more like with Pumapunka, with these, the really cool carving and everything. I would...
Maybe it was a later culture.
Or earlier. To me, it's I would say it was, I would probably... I'm not so sure I'm in the I go for interdimensional stuff more than extraterrestrials and Pleiades and stuff like that. I go for interdimensional things.
Okay.
So I could see them being gateways for other dimensions. I could see that.
Well, if that were the case, it might just not be mind travel. It might be a physical transportation, or maybe it was just light beings. I don't know.
Could be.
Could be.
I just you go to the Billy Meyer stuff, and you go to. It's there's so many different theories out there, but a theory is just a theory, and to my mind, the Corbel construction takes you way back in time, but Phoenicia is only 3,000 years. I think they go way back before then.
I think so
and I
too.
bet they were here. It could have even, they could have even, there have been 5 mass destruction events in the history of the world.
Yeah.
It could be from another time of this world too.
According to Zecharia Sitchin, the Anunnaki landed here about 450,000 years ago, and then they started the human hybridization programs about 250,000 years ago. So there were people here, I'm not sure who they all were, but
well, I'm sure that this planet, because of its environment and its atmosphere and everything, I am sure that travelers have been here on and off for billions of years.
Billions, huh? Wow. I know that I've read some stuff, and I can't cite the source on this one, but that this planet at one point early on had been, it's a jewel, and everyone in the universes wanted to come and vacation here, so they would take a break and they would come and stay on planet Earth for a little while. I know that sounds outlandish, but that was according to one of the books I was reading, that we've been visited.
Then the Nazca lines is graffiti.
Are what graffiti?
Space.
Space graffiti?
Interterrestrial graffiti.
Oh.
Luke was here.
So without a purpose then, or without direction? You don't think it had something to do with directions?
No,
No?
no idea.
Oh, okay. Well, there are, long straight lines as if they're almost landing patterns.
Well, yeah, and under the ones that really look like runways and stuff like that, there is a magnetic strip of some sort running.
Now that I hadn't heard.
Yeah.
That just defies logic. Then what about the pictures? So you think the picture part of the Nazca lines is graffiti?
Well, they had to be done by someone who could see them from the air.
Oh, yeah.
There was no purpose. So I'm not sure. The Earth could be one heck of a big billboard.
Well, the next time you go up in a UFO, you should ask them. Don't you think?
Well, every now and then, people try to think of the most profound answers possible, but sometimes it's a stupid answer.
A simple one will do. A simple answer. Oh my, that's a lot to think about. Anything else in particular you want to briefly bring up, Barbara? We haven't got much time left, but...
Oh, geez.
We only got about a minute left, so...
Yeah, so we'll just have to have you on another program, I'm afraid.
Okay.
Okay, good. That sounds good. Anything you'd like to bring up? You've got some radio shows coming up or any lectures or anything like that?
Well, if people just check my website, there's a calendar there with all of the interviews and all of the nightlight shows and stuff like that. And that's www.barbaradelong.com. And
also, too, you've got posted The Secret of the Stones on your site, and that, I must tell everybody, is really worth sitting and watching and listening to. Very interesting. It might be supplemental information to what we discussed tonight. Very interesting. Well, Barbara, thank you so much. We'll just have to have you back on again.
My pleasure.
Okay, thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for joining us, Barbara.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, bye-bye.
Have a good night. Okay, so Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience. And I guess that's it for this week. We'll be back